Are you sick of hauling in a ton of heavy gear every time that you go into the woods to film your hunt? If so, we might have a solution. Hello everybody, this is Nathan Nelson with Stillwater Outdoors, and in this video today we are going to be talking about the Modern Assassin Reach tree camera arm. My goal with this video is simply this: to help you decide whether or not you should buy this tree camera arm to film your hunts. Now, I've been filming my hunts for the past couple years with a beast of a trail camera arm. This thing is a tank. It's the Muddy Hunter arm. And this thing weighs in at 7 pounds, so it is literally just a beast. But it's got a really long reach to it. I mean, I can get some great footage with it. It is stable. I love the thing. If it wasn't so heavy and it wasn't so bulky, it would just be absolutely amazing. I decided to start looking for some other different options of what can I do to film my hunts that isn't going to make me be carrying in 40, 50 pounds every time I go into the woods. So I started searching online and I discovered this camera arm called the Reach. This thing weighs in at only 3 pounds. 3 pounds. And that's what the strap included. And speaking of the strap, it's a silent cam over strap. So this thing is so quiet to be able to put it around the tree. I'm sick of using ratchet straps. Now they do have two options for the length of the strap: a 4-foot strap and a 6-foot strap. I would suggest getting the 6-foot strap because sometimes you're going to be in a tree that's just a little bit bigger and you need to have that extra length to be able to wrap your tree camera arm around it. One of my favorite things about this camera arm is the base. I think it honestly puts the 4th Arrow camera arm to shame with its design. There's not all these screws and things making noises and clanking, and no loose parts at all. It's just one solid piece, and you literally, to just get this camera arm level and in place, you just have to move a lever. And on top of that, this base is like half of the weight of most bases that you're going to find on the market. So it really is a pretty incredible ball pivot design where this thing can adjust to any angle, just like what you would find with the 4th Arrow camera arm. You can put it on pretty much any tree and be able to film your hunts. The arm is made of 3 different sections. And this is very nice if you're like a saddle hunter and you can like get this thing and maneuver it into tight spots. You can get it exactly where you want it to be and not have to worry about these big arms swinging out and hitting you in the waist. You also have the advantage of, if you're in the tree and you're trying to film this thing, you can get into different angles and move this thing around where it would have been limited otherwise by a 2-arm system. So I'm sure the real question that you guys are having right now is, does the thing work good? Is it going to be good for my footage? Well, let's get down to the nitty-gritty. Before buying this camera arm, I had 3 main concerns with it. The first was, the arm looks kind of flimsy. Pretty skinny, pretty small. I was like, ew, I don't know if that's going to be able to hold up my GH5 and all the other different things that I have. That's a lot of weight. Is this thing actually strong enough to hold my camera? But in all reality, this is a solid piece of aluminum. It's not that hollow junk crap that you find. And unless you're yanking on that thing like a grizzly bear, you ain't gonna do nothing wrong to it. My second main concern that I had with this camera arm is if it is going to be strong enough to hold my heavy camera gear setup and not be shaking and bouncing all over the place. I don't really want my camera footage being like... So I want it steady. But my camera gear is probably heavier than what most people are going to be running. If you're running just like a straight handy cam or you're just doing some sort of camcorder, it's probably not as big of a deal. But I was a little bit more concerned because with the GH5, you know, it's about 3 pounds total for my setup out at the very end of this tree camera arm. So I was a little bit skeptical that it would be able to hold my footage perfectly smooth. And so I'm going to take you into a test right now just so you can see how it actually holds up under the weight of my camera. All right, so now we're going to check how stable this camera is on this tree camera arm. So the first thing I'm going to mention is that with my GH5, I've got in-body stabilization, and I also have stabilization on the lens itself. So I've got two systems there that work together to give a really good smooth video. I turned off the stabilization for this video that was on my lens. Okay, so you'll get to see that here in just a sec. Alright, so now we're going to try this with the stabilization on with my lens. Alright, now just so for a frame of reference, I broke out my muddy tree camera arm just to show you the difference in stability. Okay, now this camera arm here, the muddy arm, this is about as solid of an arm as you'll ever find, especially considering that this thing reaches out like 45 or 46 inches. So we'll give you guys a little example here of how stable this one is in comparison to the Reach camera arm. In both of these tests, I was just as aggressive with two of them. One thing I did notice is that I could be much more aggressive in my movements, and it would stabilize with this Muddy Hunter arm versus the Reach camera arm. Now, one thing that I was doing was I was keeping this fully extended on both of them, because when it's fully extended out, that's when it's going to have its greatest chance for bounce. Okay, so I was trying to do it as equal of comparisons as possible. One thing I did notice with the Reach arm is that when you let go, your release is very important to the stability of that camera. If you just jerk that thing, it's going to keep bouncing for a little bit. But if you just put it in place and then gently let your hand off of it, it does a whole lot better. All right, so you can definitely see that there is some bounce that this camera does have. So I'm going to take you back inside and we're going to talk a little bit more about that. So to be quite honest, I wasn't thoroughly impressed with the sturdiness of the tree camera arm. To me, it's not as big of a deal to have an initial bounce when you grab the camera arm. Most tree camera arms are going to have somewhat of a little bit of a jolt. As you grab that camera arm, it's going to shake a little bit. To me, what's more of the bigger issue here is when you hit it and then you let go and it keeps doing this kind of thing. That's where it can be a little bit of a challenge for me. That's one of my bigger frustrations with this camera, is that, you know, it keeps bouncing just a little bit longer than I would like it to. But despite all of that, I still feel like it pays for me to have this tree camera arm because of the weight savings, especially as kind of a run and gun hunter where I'm carrying in a stand and sticks on my back, or a saddle and platform on my back and sticks. You know, just having this lightweight setup is going to be big time for me. So I'm willing to make a little bit of that sacrifice, and one of the reasons why I'm able to make that sacrifice is because I've got good in-body stabilization on both my camera and my lens. This makes a huge difference for the footage. If you look at the example here of when my footage has no in-body stabilization on this tree camera arm when it bounces versus when my in-body stabilization is on, huge difference. So if you're going to be running a camera setup that's a little bit heavier on this type of tree camera arm, you better make sure that you've got one that's good in-body stabilization. Now, if you're really serious about having steady footage, you could always go into your editing software and put on the stabilization feature. And what it basically does is it just kind of crops in on your image just a little bit and takes out some of that shake. At that point, you're probably not going to have any issues with this. And if you're a self-film hunter, chances are your footage isn't going to be the best looking stuff ever on the planet. It's not like you're probably putting it on the Outdoor Channel. So, you know, if you've got a little bit of shake here and there, it's probably not the end of the world. But there are some ways that you can make it a little bit better. The third and final concern that I had with this tree camera arm is this thing long enough? Is it actually physically long enough to get into positions that I want to be able to get in when I'm self-filming? Now, the tree camera arm itself reaches 24 inches. If you include the base to that, it sticks out from the tree probably anywhere of 28 inches or something like that. So it does come out a fair amount. And it's not quite as good as the reach of what my Muddy Hunter arm is, which is like 46 or 45 inches. But with this third articulating arm on this, you can wrap it in ways that you wouldn't normally be able to wrap it. So it will be able to conform around the tree a little bit better. Like if you're in a saddle position, you could literally take that thing and swing it around the tree. Now, the one thing that I didn't really like as much when I was self-filming while in a hang-on stand is that if I've got to get the camera, I hold it on my right side over here, if I've got to get the camera over here to film something even slightly at an angle back behind me, that's where I start to run into some issues, because then I've got this thing pressed up really tight against my waist, and I'm kind of a smaller guy as it is, and I can just barely make the corner. But then if I need to move to make a shot, it's not the best. So what I have decided to do with this base is I put it as tight to my side as I can get it. I want it right there so that there's no extra movement. If you put that thing partway around the tree behind you, you're going to be so far away from this thing that by the time you wrap it around, it's going to be meeting you mid-chest. Okay? You want to get this thing right along your side so it can reach as far as possible. This camera's got a lot of give and take. I honestly love it for the design, the flow, the size. I mean, when I put that thing in my bag, it is just, oh, this is just great. Okay? Especially compared to the camera arm that I was running. It is absolutely fantastic. The shake, it's not a do or die for me at this point. The length, it's not a do or die. It might bother me at some point when maybe it cost me a good opportunity to get some footage of a deer, but for the most part, I think that this camera is worth it for me, and I think it might be worth it for you. It's not a perfect camera arm, but I think it's a pretty stinking good one. The camera arm itself is $240, so it's not real cheap, but it's not like crazy expensive. It's definitely an investment, but something that you could use into the future, and I think it would be a very good camera for you. Thank you guys so much for watching.